So in this case, we're going to learn how to solve. So we're going to do, this is that last question I told you we would do later. So we're going to put -7 in for that g of x. So -7 is equal to -5x plus 7. And then we're going to go through and we're going to solve for x. So when we're going to go through and solve for x, I'm going to subtract 7. I'm going to subtract 7. That goes away. So I have -5x equals -7 minus 7 is -14. Then we're going to go through and we still have to solve for x. So we're going to divide by -5, divide by -5. So that cancels out. So now I just ran out of room. So I have basically -14 over 5 is, you can leave this as 14/5 equals x. Or if you want to go through and you want to divide that out, you're going to get 2.8 equals x. Any one of those two answers is perfectly fine. So then you go on to page 4 on your lovely little paper, and we're going to talk about absolute value functions. So absolute value is when you're going to have that letter V graph. So when you have this nice little V graph, and basically what happens for every x, there can only be, it's going to be, so if you have the absolute value of a negative number, then that's going to be like a +3. So what's the absolute value of -3? +3. What's the absolute value of 2? It's still going to be 2. So I think about it as you're only taking that distance that you're going to travel. So it's always going to be the absolute value of any number will always be a positive number, and then that's just what that distance will be. So the absolute value of -3 means that you have bars. You've got bars with that -3, and that value is 3. The absolute value of 2, remember you still have the bars, is still going to be 2. So this is where it's going to be extremely helpful for you guys to use Desmos and to check your work on Desmos. So I'm going to just, this one I'm still going to go through and we're just going to substitute it in for -6. So I'm taking this -6 right here and I'm substituting it in for that absolute value. So you're going to have 2/5, the absolute value of -6 plus 1 minus 3. So, and this is like PEMDAS. So -6 plus 1 ends up being -5, and I have my absolute value. And then that 2/5 is still there. So the absolute value of -5 is +5. And now this, basically right here, this is the same thing as saying multiplying. That's all the same thing. So I'm multiplying by 2/5. And then you're still going to subtract that 3. So I'm running out of room. So I'm going to go 2/5. 2/5 times 5 ends up being 2, and you can use your calculator. And now I'm going to have 2/5 times 5 is 2, and then I still have that -3. So 2 minus 3 is -1. So that's my answer. So this says when this is -6, when x is -6, my value is going to be -1. So that's this one. So this next part, this is where the Desmos part is really going to come in handy. So now you've got to solve, because this time you're looking for your x value. And so I'm going to show you a little bit on Desmos first, so it will make more sense if you actually see it on Desmos. So we're going to go in, and I'm going to type in my function rule, 2/5 absolute value. So I'm going to go 2 divided by 5, and then I'm arrowing over, and then I do that absolute value. And you go to functions here, and I think it's under miscellaneous. Nope. Maybe. Distance. Nope. So 2/5. So here's what you're going to do. Oh, there it is. Right there. That A. So now you're going to have, it's right next there, underneath the parenthesis sign, sorry. So, and then you're going to have x plus 1, and it's inside, then you have your little absolute value, so we put our little absolute value sign again, you would close it, and then minus 3. So that's my absolute value little function. So now what happens, and you can put equals y, that's fine, equals y. So now down here, I'm going to type this again, and then this time, y equals 1. And if you notice on your graph, this is, I'm going to squeeze that out just a little. So this hits at 2 places. So this hits at 2 places. This hits over here, and it hits over here. So this time, you're going to have 2 answers for this particular problem. And we've got to have that. We're going to have x equals something and x equals something because we know that we're going to get 2 answers using that little Desmos graph. So I'm going to have this, and I know I'm going to have this because you know you're going to have two particular answers. So what happens, and the way that this works, is that 1 is equal to 2/5 absolute value of x minus, or x plus 1, and then minus 3. So the reason why this, and what you have to do is you have to go through and you have to solve these so you can get x all by its little self. So you're going to have to go through and solve this. So you're going to get this minus 3. So if I looked at my little Desmos, I moved it down here first to -3 first. It slid on down. So my graph slid on down, but now I've got to add that to both sides. So that cancels that out. And now I've got 4 is equal to 2/5 and then x plus 1. Now let me show you something. So if I just typed this part in, 2/5, 2 divided by 5, and then I arrow over, absolute value, and then I'm going to have x plus 1, right? And then I have this. This is the part that gets kind of crazy. And then y is equal to 4. If I look, this value and this value, that x value is the same. This x value and this x value is exactly the same. So this is why this can kind of work, because it's where I'm looking for when my x's are going to be exactly the same. So I'm looking for that. Okay. So now here's the part that gets really crazy and you got to pay attention. So now I'm going to divide by 2/5. I'm dividing by 2/5. So I use my Desmos again, just because, you know, he's my friend. So I'm going to divide by 2/5. I'm going to take 4 and I'm going to divide, and this is where I like to give myself, put in parentheses, 2 divided by 5. And then I get 10. So 10 is the absolute value of x plus 1. 10 is the absolute value of x plus 1. Well, when I have that absolute value, in order to get this on both sides, because I want to have a positive value, and I know I'm going to have 2 answers, because those little lines are going to hit there at 2 answers. So this line, this blue line, hits my v absolute value graph at 2 places. So what happens is this part right here, 10, -10, is going to be x plus 1. And then positive 10 is going to equal x plus 1. And the reason why is because inside this absolute value part, inside that, I could walk 10 steps forward, so that would be your positive 10, or I could walk 10 steps backwards. That's why this can be your -10. So it could be a positive 10 steps forward, or it can be a -10 steps backwards. So then we go through and we solve. So I'm going to subtract 1, subtract 1. So x is equal to -11. Subtract 1, subtract 1, and x is equal to 9. So we have our friend. We have our friend here. And we're going to look. So this point right there is 9, 1. This point right here is negative 11, 1. So that's just using my little Desmos to see if I got my answers. Oh yeah, when x is negative 11, then I have y to be 1. When x is 9, y is also 1. So this is checking your answer using Desmos. Okay, we're going to go over to G. Same thing, you're going to have a Desmos thing. So we're going to have this one. This time I'm going to substitute in. This says that we have to solve. So I'm going to use my friend because he helps me out. My Desmos friend. Dan Myers is he's pretty cool to come up with Desmos, him and the team. So we're going to go absolute value, and then you're going to have x minus 4. Oops. And now you're going to add 2. So I'm going to go plus 2. So that's, I've just typed in my original formula and equals y. I just always like to put equals y. So then the next one is that y equals my answer. Well, this time my function says that it has to equal 5. So I'm going to type in a 5. And now I'm going to get my 2 answers. So now we're going to go through and we're going to solve this algebraically. Because I have that this is going to hit at 2 places. So we're going to go through and we're going to solve this algebraically. So I'm going to have 5 is equal to the absolute value of x minus 4 plus 2. So we have to go through and we're going to subtract my 2 because the whole goal is to get that absolute value to be all by its little lonesome. So that goes away, and now I have the absolute value of x minus 4 is equal to 3. So x minus 4 equals 3, and then when you have the absolute value, you know that that absolute value inside here, this is what I did last time, inside this little absolute value part, inside those bars, so inside those nice little bars, you are going to have that this is going to be a negative 3 is going to be x minus 4, and because you know that you have 2 answers, because we saw that that graph, that V graph hits your horizontal line at 2 places, and positive 3 is going to be x minus 4. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides. That cancels out, so x is going to be negative 1. I'm going to add 4 to both sides. So 3 plus 4 is 7. So those are my 2 answers. And then we always want to check on our Desmos friend. We're always going to check on the Desmos friend. So then when we go through, I just push those buttons and I get, oops, I made a mistake there. See, oh yeah, negative 3 plus 4, that should be positive 1. This is why you check your work. So that should be positive 1. And if I look, when I look at my Desmos, I have 1, 5, and I have 7, 5. And that's what I got, 7 and 1. Those are my answers when my y value is 5. Okay, let's do the next one. So again, we have 2 is equal to the absolute value of x minus 4 plus 2. So we're going to get rid of y equals 5. My equation didn't change. I haven't changed my function rule. I just have my equation is now, instead of it equaling 5, it is going to equal 2. That looks kind of funny because this one is going to hit, this only hits at one place. Well, let's figure out why that works. So now I'm going to go through and we're going to go through and we're going to solve. So I'm going to subtract 2 and I'm going to subtract 2. So that goes away. So I've got x minus 4 is equal to 2 minus 2 is 0. Oh, well, it's only got one answer because my graph will never ever hit it. 0 is neither positive nor negative. It's just a special number at 0. So 0 is equal to x minus 4 because 0 is not positive or negative. It's just 0, special. So then you go through and solve, and we solve this and we add 4 to both sides. So x is equal to 4. So we look at Desmos, and then I push and I get 4, 2. That's my answer, 4, 2. And so at the bottom of this page 4 here, where I have all these little graphs done for you, this is kind of like where if you looked, this was y equals 2. So this line right here is y equals 2. And then this line right here, I'm going to do this in blue, this is y to be equal to 5. So that's just kind of those lines. This is where it helps. I just did it on Desmos instead of on paper. But if you want to write yourself a little note to remember that. And then these over here, this one is y is equal to 1. It kind of goes off the chart. So then this is y is equal to 1, and it hits here, and it hits there. So that's one. This is kind of helpful, but honestly, I would use Desmos because then you just push it and it gives you the right answer. But this is how you kind of check it on paper and gives you like a little idea. So now we're on page 5, and we're going to go through, and now we're going to go through and solve in a bunch of different things. But I've taught you how to test it on Desmos, and so now you guys can go through and do that. So this is 19. So everything that has an f of x, this is what I do. I like to color code the f's. So everything that has an f of x, I'm going to color code it. And then everything that has the g's, I'm going to color code those a different color, and everything that has the x, I'm going to color that a different color. This is just me helping me be better. Okay, and remember which function I'm going to actually use because there's 3 different functions up here. So question this one right here, you're going to have f of x is equal to negative 19. So negative 19 is equal to negative x squared minus 3. So right here, you're going to add 3 to both sides. Oops. So that goes away, and now you have negative x squared equals negative 19 plus 3 is negative 16. And you're thinking, well, wait, what is that? Wait a second. So this right here, there's a negative 1 right there. So remember, there's a negative x squared. That's a negative 1x squared. So I'm going to divide by negative 1. And negative divided by a negative is a positive 16. And that's x squared. So now in order the opposite of squaring something, and this is where you kind of use your little friend, and if we looked and you had your little yellow friend on your desk, so if I have something that's x squared, I don't know if you can see that. So if this is x squared on your calculator, right above that in blue on my calculator is a little square root. So that's going to be the square root. So the opposite of squaring is the square root. So now to undo that, so to undo this process, we have to take the square root of x. Now this is where your calculator is not very bright. And you got to be brighter than your calculator because this gives you 4. And then you think, wait a second. 4 times 4 is 16. Yeah, that's right. But also negative 4 times negative 4 is 16. So there has to be 2 answers. So down here, you're going to use your little Desmos down here to check it. So you use your little Desmos friend. Again, we type this in. So this was, my function rule was y equals negative x squared, and then you have minus 3. And then the next function rule is y equals negative 19. And now you can't see where that line hits, so I have to scroll. And now you've got this little black line here, and it's going to hit at 2 places. So if I hit that, and I push that, and I push that, I get negative 419. And I push this one, I get positive 419. So I had to kind of look, I kind of had to look at those, and then that just kind of gives you like that little idea of double checking your work. So that's what goes down here as your little thing. Oh yeah, I checked it on Desmos too. Okay, you're gonna get to show me that. If you don't show me on Desmos, then you got. I mean, if you don't like do it, then you gotta like make a little screencastify video. Then you gotta actually show me. So this next one, this time I'm gonna use function g. So function g, -3 is equal to negative square root of x plus 2. So with -3, so now what happens is, again, we've got this little -1 right here. So this is -1 times. So I'm going to divide by -1. -3 divided by -1 is +3. So now I've got the square root of x plus 2. And then the opposite of the square root, the opposite of square root, if the opposite of squaring is square root, and then the opposite of square root is to square. So I have to square this. So 3 times 3, remember this is 3 times 3, is x plus 2. So 3 times 3 is 9, is equal to x plus 2. And now I'm going to go through and I'm going to subtract 2 on both sides. So now x is equal to 9 minus 2 is going to be 7, and then that's my answer. So now let's double check on my friend Desmos. We're going to go through and we're going to check on my friend Desmos, and we're going to type in the original function. So I'm going to have y equals, and now you're going to have negative, and then you have square root. So this is where I think and it's right there at the bottom, square root, and now you're going to have x plus 2, and you've got this, and you can't see, so let's go find it. There we go. There's my red line. I know it's going to be red because that says red. And then I had this was going to equal -3. So I'm going to have y equals -3. And now I've got a blue line. And if we look right here, make that smaller, it only hits at one place. And then that point is 7, -3. Well, that's what I just got. X is 7. So now I know that I did the right answer. So this is just the check part down below. And now we're on the last one. And now we're going to have this is going to be absolute value again. And we're going to have this to be equal to h of x. It's going to be 5 is equal to x minus 2 plus 1. Again, we have to get the absolute value part all by its little lonesome. So I have to subtract 1 on both sides. So 5 minus 1 is 4 is equal to the absolute value of x minus 2. And then oh, yeah. She told me that inside all of that stuff, whenever this is inside there, all of that it's going to be the +4, or I can walk 4 steps backwards. So -4 is equal to x minus 2. And because I can have one or the other, +4 is equal to x minus 2. Because you can have those equal to both sides. So now we're going to go through and we're going to add our 2 to both sides. Add 2, -4 plus 2 is -2 equals x. Add 2. So now x is equal to 6. So those are going to be my 2 answers. We're going to go through and we're going to check this on Desmos to make sure that we did everything correctly. And so then we get y equals, and now you have your absolute value, x minus 2, close your absolute value, and then you have plus 1. So there's this green part. I'm just going to move my graph. So that's this green line right there. Like green V, absolute values are always green. And then this is going to be y equals 5. And this hit at -2 and +6. So that matched up because my x value was -2 and this was 5. and my x value is positive 6 when that is 5. So this is how you're just checking your work. And if you need to graph that on your paper just to make sure that you actually went through and checked it, that's a good idea. But this is how you're going to do your homework when you're solving for equations. And Desmos is your friend.